How y'all doing? Good to be here at solid ground. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so everyone should have a sheet. My name is Merrill. I'm on the staff with the club. And let's take a look at the sheet on your desk now. And the title is Mirrors. So glad to be here with you guys. We're going to be covering the fourth metaphor of this semester in 2 Corinthians. It's mirrors, and it's found in 2 Corinthians 3:18, which is the verse at the top of your sheet. So how about let's read that verse together. Ready, set, go.
Looking all with unveiled face, beholding and reflecting like a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, even as from the Lord's Spirit.
Great. So it says here, we're beholding and reflecting like a mirror. So this is the basis of this metaphor. Of course, we've been covering metaphors this whole semester in 2 Corinthians. And can anyone stand up, any student stand up and give us the first three metaphors we've already covered? All right, Andrew, go.
So first we're captives of Christ.
Right.
And then we become fragrances of Christ. And then also we're letters of Christ.
Good. Okay, that's it. It's very easy. Okay, someone else. Stand up and tell us the first three metaphors. All right, Josh.
We are captives, seed bearers, and letters of Christ.
Amen. Good. Now, can someone give us a little meat on those bones? What does it mean to be a captive of Christ? See, we want you guys to get into this till it just comes out of you. What about one of our seniors here? All right, Genki.
Captive is to be defeated and to be led.
Nice. You know, he said, Trevor Walker shared this one, and he said, usually we don't want to be defeated, but when it comes to, in our conflicts with Christ, we want to be defeated. And he gave us this prayer, Lord, defeat me all the time, never let me win. So good to be a captive of Christ. Okay, and then what about the fragrance, the incense bearers? What does that mean? Does anyone else? Carlos, looking at you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're a fragrance of Christ, basically the people around us, they can just smell something different. There's something different about us.
Right.
We've been touching the most fragrant one, Christ, and just have this essence about us that other people can see and smell.
Right. And that fragrance, he said, is to some, is life unto life. That means they are like attracted. They're like, I want whatever you have. I can't put my finger on it, but I want that. And to others, it's death unto death. They're repulsed by the smell of Christ. Now, what about the letters? Last week, Neil shared about what it means to be a letter. So can someone give us a little summary? What does that mean? Nick, I'm looking at you back here. Were you here last week?
I was.
Okay, tell us. What does it mean?
Yeah, letters of Christ. So, awesome. Okay, so the letter, the Spirit is the E.
Right.
And we need to let Christ write his letter on our heart.
Right.
We need to be read by men to see that we're letters of Christ.
Exactly. Some of you guys who are sophomores, I can see more of Christ was written into you during your freshman year when I see you now. And some of you guys are freshmen, and like Neil said, paragraphs of Christ are being written into your heart to be read by others. Okay, that's good. Now let's go to tonight's metaphor on mirrors. Mirrors are very unique. They brighten up a space. They allow us to see new people and new places. They're used in telescopes and microscopes. Mirrors are very unique metaphors, so we're going to get into that. But we need to see the historical background. So I think that's on your sheet as point 2. Now let me give you that. Of course, if you weren't here in the previous weeks, the historical background for the captives and the fragrance was the victory of a Roman general against an enemy land. So what they had in Rome was, if he won a victory, he would lead captive some of those vanquished foes back into Rome in a triumphal procession, and some of them would have fragrance, they would have incense that they'd be scattering. So Paul's saying Christ was that general. He led us captive. He defeated Satan. And now we're here as his captives and with his fragrance. So that was the background that he was using. There's another background for the one on mirrors, and that comes from Exodus 34. And this was a particular time in the Israelites' history when God wanted to give a covenant, his covenant to his people. And we know this story. He called Moses up to the top of the mountain. People were at the bottom of the mountain. Moses at the top of the mountain. And they're like, Moses has been gone for a long time. It was 40 days and 40 nights that he was there. And he wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking, but he was just spending time with God, just being infused with God. And God was speaking to him all the law, the 10 Commandments, and the design of the tabernacle. And then he said, now Moses, here's these 2 tablets, the 10 Commandments. Now go back down and speak to the people, everything that I've commanded you. So Moses is coming back down, and actually he didn't know it, but the skin of his face was shining when he came down the mountain. And the people of Israel were afraid of him when they saw him. Can you imagine? We've never seen this in real life. They were like, who are you? They were, your face is shining. What happened to you? They might have thought he was an alien or you're radioactive. It's like, we are afraid to come near you. But he said, no, come here. Let me tell you everything God commanded me. So then they came near, and they couldn't look at his face. So let's read verse 7. This is 2 Corinthians 3:7. Let's read that together. Ready? Go.
The sons of Israel were not able to gaze at the face of Moses because of the glory of his face, the glory which was being done away with.
Right. So it says that there was glory in his face. He was shining, and they couldn't look at him. But then it says the glory was being done away with. Now, verse 13, it says, Moses, who put a veil on his face. Now, let me just stop there. Originally, I might have thought that he put a veil on his face because they were afraid. They couldn't look at his face. His face was like a flashlight. But that's not why he put a veil on his face. Let's read that whole verse together. Ready? Go. Moses
Who put a veil on his face so that the sons of Israel would not gaze at the end of that glory which was being done away with. But there the Israelites' thoughts were hardened, for until the present day the same veil remains at the reading of the Old Covenant. Indeed, unto this day, whenever Moses is read, a veil lies on their hearts.
Right. Okay. So in verse 13 it says, he put a veil on his face because he didn't want them to see that actually the glory was diminishing. The shining was fading. He was like a glow-in-the-dark Moses. You put it in the light, it's glowing for a while, but then when he gets away from God's presence, he is coming back to normal Moses. And he doesn't want them to gaze on that and for them to think, oh, his glory is fading. And what he would do is, after he finished talking to them, he would put a veil on his face, and he would go into the tent. No one could see his face. And then when God called him, he would lift the veil up again. God would infuse him again, go out and talk to them again, and they'd say, oh, your face is still shining. But then when he was done speaking, veil back on his face so that they couldn't see that the glory was actually diminishing. And this is significant because he's going from more glory to less glory. Now, okay, when we say veil, I don't want you to be thinking of like a bridal veil that's like basically see-through, this tiny little silk thing or cotton thing. Just think like blanket, something that you cannot see through. That's probably more like what it was. That was the whole point. It's a veil. You cannot see through it. It's a barrier. It's insulation. And so Paul's using that in the historical context. And then in verse 14 and 15, he begins to identify there's a problem. The Israelites' thoughts were hardened when they received that covenant, when they received that law. They thought, we can do it. All that Jehovah said, we will do. And then metaphorically, he takes that veil that was on Moses' face, and he says, that veil is basically now on their heart. Whenever you say, I can do it, I can please God by my own effort, he's saying that's a veil that's lying on your heart. You can't actually do it. So then in verse 15 he says, unto this day, whenever Moses is read, a veil lies on their heart. So Moses being read is the reading of the law of Moses, the books of Moses. So just as at that day, whenever they saw Moses, they could not see the glory of God because of the veil. Now when they read Moses, they cannot see the glory of God because of the veil. And he said the veil is now on their heart. So now we're going to go into the spiritual reality because this still applies today. Okay, so I was thinking about this and I wanted to just point out what are some veils that we experience today. So take notes if you have a pen. You know, some veils, like it mentions here, are religious thoughts, religious concepts. Their reading of Moses was itself a veil because they inclined to keep the law and please God in so doing. But that was impossible. They didn't realize that was impossible because of sin which dwells in us. So basically, in principle then, religion is a veil. Religious concepts are a veil, and that also applies to other religions, which is why it's so hard for people from other religions to receive Christ. You know, the principle of every religion is my effort to please God, my attempts to get to God by certain acts and behavior. That is a veil. Okay, here's another kind of veil, besides religious concepts. For other people, maybe they have natural concepts. So what is like a natural veil? Well, what I was thinking of are materialistic philosophies, that we're just atoms, there's nothing else, and when we die, we're just obliterated. That's a veil that prevents you from seeing God. It's your worldview that prevents you from seeing God. And it might be based on science, but it's flimsy science concerning the origin of life and concerning evolution. But these types of things can be veils preventing us from seeing God, seeing the glory of God. Another one is hedonism. It's basically just enjoy life now to the full. We don't know whether we'll be here tomorrow, so let's just enjoy everything we can now. Eat and drink. Tomorrow we die. That veils you because it keeps you occupied with the here and now, and it doesn't allow you to think about eternity. It doesn't allow you to think about what's coming after you die. So those are some natural veils. Materialistic philosophies, hedonism. And I would say with us here at CSOC, maybe those aren't so much front and center. So with us, I would say maybe the biggest veil is our turned away heart itself. So our turned away heart itself is a veil. Like, if I want to see Zabian, but I'm turned like this, I just cannot see him. Y'all can see him because you're looking at him, but if I'm turned away, I cannot see him. So what Paul wants to do is to tell us that the veils can be taken away. I love that. So that's the good news. So let's read verse 16. Ready, set, go.
Whenever their heart turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away.
Okay, let's stop there. Let's stop right there. Okay. So underline that word, whenever. Oh, I love this word. Whenever. You don't have to have a prerequisite to turn your heart to the Lord. You don't have to have a lot of penance before your heart can be turned to the Lord. Your heart is turnable. Huddy, your heart is turnable. Oh, I love this, students. This is the best news that you could receive, that you have a heart that turns to the Lord. When I was a student, Neil told me, Merrill, you have a heart that turns to the Lord. That was the best news I ever received from Neil. I've never forgotten it. And I want to say to you, Sonny, you have a heart that turns to the Lord. Brandon, you have a heart that turns to the Lord. Oh, this is so good. Because when our heart turns to the Lord, the veils are taken away. Okay, when you turn your heart to the Lord, what do you see? What do you see when you turn your heart to the Lord? Let's read now verse 17. Only verse 17.
And the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.
Okay, this is big news. We might read over it, but it is a big statement to say, and the Lord is the Spirit. How could that be? You know, we know the Spirit of God was there from eternity past. The Father, the Son, and the Spirit, they're all eternally co-existent. But that's not what he's saying here. He's not saying And by the way, there's a God Spirit. He's not saying that because he's saying not God is the Spirit, but the Lord is the Spirit. And the Lord in this book is referring to Christ. He's referring to Jesus. So then you should say, well, how can Jesus be the Spirit? How can Jesus be the Spirit? I thought he was Jesus and the Spirit was the Spirit. Okay, that's why I brought these bracelets for you guys. So let's all look at these bracelets. And we love these bracelets because there's a diagram on them. And this diagram explains how it can be that the Lord is the Spirit. Okay, so let's take a look. There's a down arrow. Once upon a time, God was in heaven and man was on earth. God was God, man was man. They were separated. But one day, God, he was conceived in the womb of Mary, and he was born as God and man, 100% God and 100% man. In this state, he could now experience new things that God previously never experienced, like suffering, tiredness. You think about it, Jesus was limited. He had to eat, he had to rest. And so he lived. That's the right arrow. And he's picking up all these experiences and adding them into his being. And then he goes to the cross willingly to die for our sins and to reconcile us to God and to destroy Satan as the bronze serpent and to release his life as the grain of wheat. And then he was in the tomb for 3 days. And then the up arrow out of the tomb, he resurrected. He rose and became a life-giving Spirit. And 2 Corinthians 3:6 says, the Spirit gives life. This Spirit which gives life is the last Adam who became this one in resurrection. So all that he accomplished, all that he is now, that he has lived a human life, is in this Spirit. And then he went to the heavens, and then he breathed into the disciples this breath, this holy breath of life, and he poured it out upon us. And now this Spirit is in us. Where's this Spirit? Where is this Spirit now? Alan's going like this. That's right. The Spirit is in our spirit, mingled with our spirit. Write this verse down, 1 Corinthians 6:17. It says, he who is joined to the Lord is one spirit. So students, you have a human spirit by your creation. God created us with a body, soul, and spirit. And that spirit is compatible with the Lord who is the Spirit. And so now they're joined as one spirit. And wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom in our experience from the bondage of the law. Okay, I love this. Paul wasn't just saying, and we're going to turn back to God who gave us the law. Now he's saying, we have someone so much more glorious to turn our heart to. So when you want to turn your heart to the Lord, you just turn to your spirit because the Lord is in your spirit. Okay, I heard it said that the Lord is just a 10-minute walk away. No matter how bad your day is, if you just take 10 minutes to walk around and talk to the Lord, you will find Him because He dwells within you. Okay, so now what does it mean that there's freedom? Let me just give you an example. When the law comes, it gives you a requirement but no supply. For example, there's a commandment which says, thou shalt not covet. But we just produce coveting of all kinds. And we're just, if someone gets a new iPhone, we're like, I want the new iPhone with 3 cameras too, and then if someone stands up and they're really sharing and everyone's like, yeah, that's so awesome. We're like, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this, but we're like, I want to do that too, so that when I stand up and share, everyone's like, yeah, that's a little bit of coveting. But the Lord in you does not covet the portion of others. He appreciates the portion of others. This is such good news. So there's freedom from coveting where the Spirit of the Lord is. Okay, now let's go on to the verse where the mirror is, verse 18. And it's a packed verse, so I just want to go through it piece by piece. So let me read just the first phrase. But we all with unveiled face, beholding and reflecting like a mirror the glory of the Lord. So of course we're contrasted now with Moses, who put a veil on his face, and with the Israelites who had a veil on their heart. The veils can be taken away. And then it says we're beholding and reflecting like a mirror the glory of the Lord. And a mirror, it can behold many things at the same time. Whatever it beholds, it reflects. So for example, think of your bathroom mirror. you can be in there, but also there's stuff behind you, maybe the soap's down here, because you can see so many things in the mirror at the same time. And that's how we are usually in our heart. We're beholding the Lord, but we're also beholding other things at the same time. And this is actually illustrated in Matthew 17 with Peter. We read this week, so I thought to share it. In Matthew 17, Jesus takes Peter and James and John up to the top of a mountain, and he's transfigured before them. He's shining, and then Moses appears, and Elijah appears, and they're conversing, and Peter sees these three, and he's like, Lord, it's good for us to be here. Let me make 3 tents. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. So he sees Jesus, but he also sees other things, and those other people were very high in his culture. They're very respected. So sometimes we're like this. We're looking at Jesus, but we're also looking at the American dream and at other things. I'm not sure. We're just looking at things. But what the Father did was he interrupted Peter. Can you imagine? You're speaking and God interrupts you. And he said, this is my beloved Son. Hear him. And they fell down, and when they looked up, they no longer saw anyone except Jesus himself alone. So this is what we want to say. We want to say, Lord, I know there's a lot of things in my mirror, but Lord, I want you to become front and center in my mirror. I want you to shine into my mirror and fill my whole vision so that I just behold only you and reflect only you. Okay, it's like a flashlight in a mirror. The Lord's like a flashlight in the mirror because he's the only shining one. So he's not that bothered if you're looking at other things. He's not that concerned, Huddy, because you know what? He's got his flashlight there, and it just outshines everything else. And the stronger he makes that light, the more you're blinded to everything else, and you can only behold him and reflect him. So that's how we want to be with the Lord. We want to say, Lord, fill my vision, fill my mirror. Lord, outshine every earthly thing. Okay, but how do we know what we're beholding? How do we know? Have you ever thought about that? How do I know what I'm actually interested in, what I'm paying my attention to? Let me just say this. Whatever we behold, we reflect. Whatever we're beholding, we're reflecting to someone else. Whatever's important to us, we're talking about it to someone else. So I want to give you three ways that you can measure so you know what I'm beholding. And first, they all start with W. So it's our words, our watch, and our wallet. So our words, our watch, and our wallet. And so the first way, of course, is our words. Jesus says in Matthew 12:34, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So whatever you find yourself talking about, that's what you're interested in. That's what you're beholding. And in today's society, actually, the more accurate place to go and find out what you're speaking about is your text messages. You just go back to your text messages and listen, what have I been texting about? And also your photos and your posts on Instagram. What have I been posting about? That is a reflection of what you're beholding. Okay, so that's with our words. Now with our watch. I don't actually mean the watch you have, obviously. I mean how you spend your time. How you spend your time is a reflection of what's important to you. We always have time for what's important to us. If someone says to you, I don't have time, actually they mean, that's just not that important to me because I have many other things I'd rather be doing with my time. Like for me, I never have time to clean my apartment. I just never seem to have time. But if you give me a very interesting book to read, I'll have all the time in the world to lie on the couch. And so this is immeasurable because you can ask, is Jesus in my schedule? You can ask that of yourself. And you have a schedule on paper you can look at. You can turn your phone sideways, and all your classes will be there, right? At least you'll have UT made that for you, right? Or somewhere, it's on my UT. You can figure out what you're doing with your schedule, and you can ask, is Jesus in my schedule? And if not, I want to get him into my schedule. Okay, I want to digress here for a little bit. There are at least 3 ways in Mark 16 where you can get Jesus into your schedule. All right, write these down. Mark 16:9, Jesus appears to Mary at morning revival. Early in the morning, he appears to Mary. So if you go to the Lord in the morning, he will appear to you. You can behold him. Mark 16:12, Jesus appears to 2 of them in the middle of the day. So if you're getting a one-on-one with a staff member or you're praying with another student in CSOC, Jesus promises to be there. I will be there, and you can behold him. Mark 16:14, There's 11, they're gathered in the evening. So if you're going to the home meetings, he's going to show up, and you can behold him in the home meetings. Okay, so that's with our watch, our time. And then the last one is with our wallet. And with our wallet, obviously I don't mean the kind of wallet you have. I mean how you spend your money. You know, we always have enough money for what's interesting to us. So if you're tracking the new release of some game or some album, you're going to have enough money to buy it when it comes out. But let me ask you this, because you can measure this. Is Jesus in your budget? Is Christ, am I budgeting for the things of Christ? For example, if it's too expensive to buy a study Bible, you're like, I can't spend $12 on that study Bible. You know, I need to be saving money, you know? It's like, okay, do you see what I'm saying? Jesus is eternally valuable, but sometimes things cost money. So you can measure, are you beholding certain things by how you spend your money? Okay, now actually, when I saw that it was www, that led me to a fourth one, and that is the actual www. And so you can actually measure what you're beholding on the internet through your browsing history. So with this one, I just want to say, you can go to your YouTube watch history, and you're going to ask, are my digital habits helping me see Jesus or not? And you can just ask this of yourself. Okay, I just want to give these to us as little checks. Okay, now, let's move on to the phrase, we are being transformed. I love this phrase, we are being transformed. You know, seeing God transforms you. I want to, briefly speak about this with certain ways that seeing God transforms you, but you just consider Noah. He saw that God was going to flood the earth. He was different after he saw. The Apostle Paul, Saul was persecuting the Christians, then he saw Jesus in the heavens, and he went from Saul to Paul the Apostle, building up, pouring out his whole life upon the church. Martin Luther, a Catholic monk, when he saw that the just shall live by faith, it changed everything. He affected the whole Reformation. So seeing God transforms you. Okay, now here are 5 ways that seeing God transforms you. Number 1, and I'm going to go through these briefly, seeing God governs you. When you see Him, you're governed. Write down Acts 26:19. Acts 26:19. Paul is there talking to a king, and the king's asking him, why are you the way you are? And he says, I saw a heavenly vision, O king, and I was not disobedient to that heavenly vision. So Acts 26:19 shows you that when you see God, you're governed. Number 2, seeing God gives you perseverance. Write down Hebrews 11:27. In Hebrews 11:27, Moses, it says, he persevered as one seeing the unseen one. The unseen one, Moses saw him. You think about Moses' job. God told him, go into Egypt and go to the most powerful ruler of your time and tell him to let all the workforce go. I mean, it's an impossible job. How could Moses persevere? He saw Christ. How can we persevere as Christians in a secular society? We need to see the unseen one. Okay, number 3, seeing God humbles us. Isaiah 6:1. Isaiah 6:1. There, Isaiah said, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord on a high and lofty throne. And I said, woe is me, for I am finished, for I am a man of unclean lips, and in the midst of a people of unclean lips I dwell. Yet my eyes have seen the King, Jehovah of hosts. So our conscience is struck when we see the Lord. We realize our sinfulness. When we see His perfection, we realize our imperfection. So seeing God humbles us. But tag team with this one, also in Isaiah 6:8, seeing God commissions us. Seeing God commissions us. Right after that, the Lord said to Isaiah, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And Isaiah said, here am I, Lord, send me. So when we see the Lord, we're sent by the Lord. And you just compare this to Peter. Tino shared about this in Matthew 16 on Sunday. When he received a revelation of Christ from the Father, he said, you're the Son of the living God. Right away, Jesus turned around and said, and you're Peter. So he was commissioned for the building of the church. Okay, so that's number 4, seeing God commissions you. And then number 5, seeing God compels us to speak. It compels us to speak. This is Acts 4:20. And there the disciples, they were at an inquiry, and they were saying, why are you speaking in this name? And they said, we cannot but speak the things which we have seen, the things which we have heard. We're compelled to speak for the Lord. Okay, so that's how seeing God, these are just 5 ways. There's many other ways that seeing God transforms you. Okay, now, I love this. Now, it doesn't just transform us, it doesn't just change us, it transforms us into the same image as the Lord. This is such an amazing point. You know, the reason Paul used this very unique word in Greek, this is a very unique word for this word, for this metaphor mirror. It's only used once in the entire New Testament, and it's literally the verb mirroring. We are mirroring the glory of the Lord. It's because the thing about a mirror is it exactly reflects the image of whatever it's beholding. And Paul is saying, we're like mirrors because we will exactly reflect the image of the Son of God. Isn't this awesome? But how so? Because originally, by default, we don't seem to reflect Him that much. So then we have to be transformed into that same image. Okay, now there's a principle here, which is that whatever you love, you become. You've heard that it said, whatever you are what you eat. But basically, whatever you love, you become. And there's a line from a hymn, and this hymn is from the 3rd century. This is the oldest hymn that I know of, and it was translated in the 1600s, and it says this. The first line goes, though Christ 1,000 times in Bethlehem be born, if He's not born in thee, thy soul is still forlorn. And then the line says, whate'er thou lovest man, that too become thou must. God if thou lovest God, dust if thou lovest dust. You see that? Whate'er you love, you will become. If you love God, you'll become just like God. If you love dust, you're just going to go back to the dust. Wow, it's so poetic. It's so awesome that we can be those that love God and become exactly the same as Him. And the campus needs this. The campus needs mirrors, beholding Him, reflecting Him to their classmates. Eleanor brought a classmate, Nick. Thank you for coming, Nick. I believe it was because Eleanor was beholding Christ and then reflecting Christ. Do we have any other friends here tonight? Hi, is it Celeste? Is that right? Who brought you? Jocelyn. You know, we want to say, we want to have a bring your friend night. We want to bring friends to solid ground. Fill this room up. The campus needs Christ. Okay, now I want to give you an example of transformation. When I learned this examples like metaphors that just really stick in you. And it's from nature. Can anyone think of an example in nature of transformation? Okay, who said that? Alicia, okay. That's exactly where I'm going. God designed butterflies to illustrate transformation. No butterfly is born as a butterfly. They're born as a lowly worm. Isn't that interesting? Why would God design a little caterpillar and then design that it will go into a cocoon and be changed from the inside out and go through a metamorphosis and come out as a beautiful butterfly? Okay, so this is actually a great illustration of us. We are the lowly worm. We're the lowly worm. Jackson, we're just men of earth. We're just men of flesh. We're bound to the earth. There's 2 Jacksons right here, so you never know. Okay. But what does the caterpillar need to do? It just needs to keep eating the leaves. And those are the leaves of the tree of life. You just keep eating the leaves. You just eat the leaves, and eventually you're going to go into a little process. And certain genes will turn on. The divine life we've received is so powerful, it will transform us from the inside out. I love this. And we receive another personality. Our likes change. What we like changes. What we can bear changes. We become the expression of Christ. This is so good. Anyway, it is so good to be in this process. So if you're in this process and you feel like 99% caterpillar, it's okay. Just stay here. Keep eating the leaves. Maybe by next semester it'll be like 98.7%. But you're on the route. You're not going from more glory to less glory. You're going from less glory to more glory. That's our destiny, is to be transformed into the same glorious image as Christ. Okay, so let's read 1 John 3:2, the last verse there. Ready, set, go. I love that. Now underline that phrase, we will be like him. Have you seen that in the Word? When he is manifested, we will be like him. There will be all the monarch butterflies flying together. We will be like him. Gone will be the caterpillar expression. There will be a new expression, glorious, transformed into his glorious image. Okay, so that's what it means to go from glory to glory. And then this is from the Lord's Spirit. Okay, so just to wrap up, we saw that we're captives of Christ. He's leading us. It's so good to be defeated by Christ. Then we're a fragrance of Christ to all those around us. We affect them by that smell, by that fragrance. And then we saw that we're letters of Christ. Christ is writing on us, and we're being read by others. Christ can be read in us. And this night we saw that we're mirrors of Christ. And as mirrors, we need to be unveiled from so many veils. All the layers of veils come off. And then we need to turn our heart, turn our mirror to the Lord, and then let him outshine all the other things that we're also beholding and reflecting. Let him outshine them. The things of earth grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. And in that process of beholding his rays, we're being transformed into the same glorious image of the Son of God. So hello, sons of God. So good to see y'all. Okay, that's it for